They became a people, not by fighting battles, but by telling stories.
One of the mysteries we face is how to explain how a people becomes a people. How does ethnic and cultural identity come into being? If early Israel was a motley group of shepherds, nomads, peasants, bandits, how is it that they moved into this area and formed an identity that was so strong? One of the things that we've learned in recent years is that cultural identity is very much a cultural fiction. This is how the Israelites made their identity, in large part by telling these stories. It is as much as if the story were shaping the people, as much as it is that the people are telling the story.
The stories told by the Israelites were well suited to inspiring and guiding a new community, for they contained an incredible richness of detail about the lives and interactions of human beings. After they became a people, the Israelites continued to tell stories which explored the good and evil inside the human heart, to teach lessons about God and his covenant with Israel. One of the greatest portraits ever of a human being, in all his strengths and weaknesses, was the story of King David.
David is a story of a human being that really throbs with realism. It's not just a hero story, it's a story of a highly dysfunctional family and a very flawed man, but a man who could not be ignored. And that inspired some early literary genius, perhaps the first literary genius in history, to set this man's life down on paper, or if you will, on parchment.
In the first story told about him, David was only a peasant boy. Until one day, God spoke to the prophet Samuel.
I am sending you to Jesse of Bethlehem, for I have found myself a king among his sons.
Samuel journeyed to Jesse's home to search for the future king.
Samuel looked at Jesse's eldest son, but Yahweh said to Samuel, "Take no notice of his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him. I do not see as human beings see. They look at appearances, but I look at the heart."
One by one, God told Samuel to reject 7 of Jesse's sons.
Samuel then asked Jesse, "Are these all the sons you have?" Jesse replied, "Only the youngest is left. He is looking after the flock." God said, "Get up and anoint him. He is the one."
The Israelites already had a king named Saul, but he was a tormented man who had angered God. Unaware of David's destiny, Saul brought the young boy into his palace to play the harp to soothe his spirits. Soon, David was like a son to Saul. Then one day, word reached the palace that the greatest warrior of the Philistines, Goliath, had challenged the Israelites to send someone out to fight him, one-on-one. No one dared to take up the challenge, except for the king's young harvest.
With his sling in his hand, David went to meet Goliath. The Philistine looked at David, and what he saw filled him with scorn, because David was only a boy. The Philistine said to him, "Come over here, and I will give your flesh to the birds of the air and the beasts of the field." I come against you in the name of the Lord God.
For the writers of the Bible, the story of the underdog, David, killing Goliath was about far more than just one battle.
Despite certain fantasies they entertained of being a powerful people and being more numerous than the stars in the heavens and so forth, they knew that they were tiny people. And there were these vast empires to the south and to the east that could at any moment overwhelm them. So again and again, they stress the idea that there is something more important in the affairs of men than physical power.
After David killed Goliath, his fame spread throughout Israel. King Saul's love turned to jealousy, and he tried to kill David again and again. David fled Saul's court and became an outlaw. Then, one night from his hideout, David spotted Saul and his army. To David's men, it was the perfect chance both to save David's life and make him king.
In the dark, David and one of his men made their way towards the enemy force and found Saul lying asleep inside the camp. The man then said to David, "Let me pin him to the ground with his own spear." David replied, "Do not kill him, but let us take the spear beside his head and his pitcher of water, and let us go away."
When he reached a nearby hilltop, David held up Saul's spear and called out to him.
David comes out and makes a big speech to Saul saying that he has no ill intention against Saul. And all of a sudden, in one of those breathtaking pivots that are so remarkable in biblical narrative, Saul says, "Is it your voice, my son David?" And he cries.
After King Saul died in battle with the Philistines, the young shepherd boy's destiny was finally fulfilled. David was crowned king. But using his new power wisely turned out to be David's greatest challenge. And by far, the most important lessons taught by David's story come from his failures.
David is not a plaster saint. He's not a perfect man. He's a man governed by his passions and ambitions, specifically his passions for women. So parallel to his struggle for power, the Bible allows us to see the intimate details of his private life, his love affairs with many women, the most famous of which is his love affair with Bathsheba.
One day, while standing on the roof of his palace, David saw a young woman bathing on a nearby rooftop.
David made inquiries about this woman and was told, "Why, that is Bathsheba." David then sent messengers to fetch her. She came to him, and he lay with her.
When Bathsheba told him she was pregnant, David arranged to have her husband killed in battle.
He looks out the window of the palace and he sees this beautiful woman bathing on the roof of a house below him, and that's where he gets into trouble. But the trouble is not just sex. The trouble is his bumbling attempts to cover up the adultery, and when he can't do that, to get rid of the husband by murder. Once he's done that, everything starts to fall apart in his life.
After David married Bathsheba, God sent a prophet to confront him. David confessed to his sin.
In the ancient world, the king is the law. And the key moment of this story of David and Bathsheba is when David stands there and says, yes, I sinned and will be punished. Because it is at that moment that we realize that Israel's revolution has won. That in fact, David recognizes that God is above all human beings, and that no human being, not a king, not a warrior, not even a prophet, can be above the law.
In punishment for his sin, God cursed David and his descendants.
For this, your household shall never be free of the sword. You have worked in secret, but I shall work for all Israel to see.
In his later years, David would be betrayed by his favorite son and grow to be a frail and lonely old man. For the writers of the Bible, David's breaking of the commandments and God's curse upon his house helped to explain the disasters Israel would suffer in the years after David.